Namaste, and welcome to our continuing series on the life divine with our beloved brother, Raka. We are in the chapter Life, chapter 19, and we begin with the sentence, "It will be said, however, that this is not what we mean by life."
Yeah. So, we'll read the first sentence and then just see what he has said earlier. Why is he saying this? It will be said, however, that this is not what we mean by life. So, what he has said in the previous para is that life is a principle. It's a principle of one of the manifestations of Satchidananda. The first from the bottom is matter, then it is life, then it is mind, and then it goes on. So life is a principle of force and Shakti. You have to see it that way. But when we look at the physical world, we think of life only in animate things. We see it totally, we don't see it as a principle, as a universal principle we don't see. That's what it means. So, it will be said, however, that this is not what we mean by life. We mean a particular result of universal force with which we are familiar and which manifests itself only in the animal and the plant, but not in the metal, the stone, the gas, operates in the animal cell, but not in the pure physical atom. We must therefore, in order to be sure of our ground, examine in what precisely consists this particular result of the play of force, which we call life, and how it differs from that other result of the play of force in inanimate things, which we say is not life. We see at once that there are here on earth three realms of the play of force: the animal kingdom of the old classification to which we belong, the vegetable, and lastly the mere material void, as we pretend, of life. How does life in ourselves differ from the life of the plant, and the life of the plant from the not life, say, of the metal, the mineral kingdom of the old phraseology, or that new chemical kingdom which science has discovered? Quite clear what he's saying?
Clear.
Yeah. He's saying that there are three and they seem to be totally different, but we are saying it's the same thing. So what is the difference, and really is it different? That's what we are going to look at. Okay? So this is one thing we must remember, that the Advaita philosophy is Advaita. There is only one ultimate reality, and that is Satchidananda. We see so many different types of things here: matter, life, mind, but they are all different forms of the one principle. This is what he says. So, we must also remember that this one principle, expressing itself in 3-4 ways, exists even in the physical world. Look at water, water vapor, and ice. It's the same thing taking 3 different forms. Someone who doesn't know that will say, yeah, they are 3 different things. Or think of the caterpillar, the cocoon, and the butterfly. They're totally different, but essentially the same thing. So this is what he's saying, that matter, life is there in matter, and matter is also there in life, and also in mind. So the whole thing is a different forms of the same one principle.
So in this paragraph, when he says, "It will be said, however, that this is not what we mean by life."
Yes.
We.
We means in general, he's talking of man.
Man.
Yeah.
And it doesn't, he's not saying
No.
this. And we have to be clear on that.
Yeah, he's not saying that. Because he knows
the next
what...
paragraph he's going to tell us.
Yes.
Okay.
So he's saying that let us look at the difference between matter, life, as in the plant, as in the animal, and us. We also belong to the animal world. So 3 realms he's saying. So that's what he's going to do in the next paragraph. So we go to the next para?
Yes.
Ordinarily, when we speak of life, we have meant animal life, that which moves, breathes, eats, feels, desires, and if we speak of the life of plants, it has been almost as a metaphor rather than a reality, For plant life was regarded as a purely material process rather than a biological phenomenon. Especially we have associated life with breathing. The breath is life, it was said in every language. And the formula is true if we change our conception of what we mean by the breath of life. But it is evident that spontaneous motion or locomotion, breathing, eating are only processes of life and not life itself. They are means for the generation or release of that constantly stimulating energy which is our vitality, and for that process of disintegration and renewal by which it supports our substantial existence. But these processes of our vitality can be maintained in other ways than by our respiration and our means of sustenance. It is a proved fact that even human life can remain in the body and can remain in full consciousness when breathing and the beating of the heart and other conditions formerly deemed essential to it have been temporarily suspended. And new evidence of phenomena has been brought forward to establish that the plant, to which we can still deny any conscious reaction, has at least a physical life identical with our own and even organized essentially like our own, though different in its apparent organization. If that is proved true, we still have to make a clean sweep of our old facile and false conceptions and get beyond symptoms and externalities to the root of the matter.
Incredible.
Clear? Again, quite clear?
Yes.
Quite clear.
We don't need to discuss.
No.
So, he's saying our normal idea of life is breathing, eating, sleeping, reproducing, moving about, locomotion. This is life. A plant doesn't do that, so therefore it is half life maybe, or it's a material thing. Not even, it can't move. I always used to wonder, no vegetable life moves?
Oh yes, it does.
It does, no?
It does move. Now,
Algae in the sea?
The other day I saw an aquatic morning glory, and it was in a pot in the water, and it was spreading out its branches to be in the water because it preferred to be in the water, and it was moving. You could see it moving.
That's right.
Yeah, the sunflower, it moves its face to, face
Right.
the sun. So that motion is there, but it can't pick itself from one
Yeah.
place and move to the other.
Yeah.
That
Means of locomotion is not there. Locomotion means moving from one place to another. But that aquatic vegetation does that. Algae is also there.
And certain vines, as I've mentioned before, I think will move. If you put a stick here, they'll move to the stick. You move the stick the next day 6 feet away, and they'll move to it there.
Yeah. So it
Now,
does
the,
move.
the plant itself doesn't move, but the part of the plant is
Yes.
moving.
Like for instance, the rhizome, the banana,
Yes.
the root goes on moving and going away.
With many rhizomatous plants
Yeah.
that happens.
So you can't, but you don't see breathing and you don't see eating and you don't see,
eating also, you have these carnivorous plants.
yes,
They open the
carnivorous
mouth and,
plants, they eat.
Absolutely.
It inside and it shuts its mouth. So even that has been noted.
Yes. In fact, he mentions that also. So, he's saying, let us examine the three realms. So, we do that now? Okay. Then he is also saying, there is one thing that is mentioning here, and new evidence of phenomena has been brought forward to establish that the plant, to which we can still deny any conscious reaction, has at least a physical life identical with our own and even organized essentially like our own, though different in its apparent organization. He will refer more clearly to Jagadish Chandra Bose, who proved that even plants have emotions, so-called emotions, but at a physical level. There is a disturbance and they feel the pain and the joy.
And since then, there's been a lot more research.
Yes, after that, yes, exactly.
Yes.
Lot has been established. So, in some recent discoveries, there's a footnote.
Long footnote.
Yeah, so let's read that footnote. And
Very
where does,
good, very important.
yeah, so where is that footnote? To which word does it belong? Oh, on discoveries, na?
Yeah.
On some recent discoveries. Okay,
Yes.
so let's read that footnote. These considerations, drawn from recent scientific researches, are brought in here as illustrative, not probative, of the nature and process of life in matter as they are developed here. Science and metaphysics, whether founded on pure intellectual speculation or, as in India, ultimately on a spiritual vision of things and spiritual experience, have each its own province and method of inquiry. Science cannot dictate its conclusions to metaphysics any more than metaphysics can impose its conclusions on science. Still, if we accept the reasonable belief that being and nature in all their states have a system of correspondence expressive of a common truth underlying them, it is permissible to suppose that truths of the physical universe can throw some light on the nature as well as the process of the force that is active in the universe. Not a complete light, for physical science is necessarily incomplete in the range of its inquiry and has no clue to the occult movements of the force. Towards the end, it's a little bit complicated, but the word probative is clear. Probative adjective from proof.
Proof.
Yeah.
Yes.
It can't be. I'm not quoting scientific things as proof, but I'm only illustrating. That's what he's saying. Then he's saying also that the metaphysical conclusions sometimes are reflected in matter, in the lower, in Prakriti. So you can see that there is a connection. That's what he's saying, nothing more than that. So we go back to our text. In some recent discoveries, which, if their conclusions are accepted, must throw an intense light on the problem of life in matter, a great Indian physicist has pointed attention to the response to stimulus as an infallible sign of the existence of life. It is especially the phenomenon of plant life that has been illumined by his data and illustrated in all its subtle functionings. We must not forget that in the essential point, the same proof of vitality, the response to stimulus, the positive state of life and its negative state, which we call death, have been affirmed by him in metals as in the plant. Not indeed with the same abundance, not indeed so as to show an essentially identical organization of life, but it is possible that could instruments of the right nature and sufficient delicacy be invented, more points of similarity between the metal and the plant life could be discovered. And even if it proved not to be so, this might mean that the same or any life organization is absent, but the beginnings of vitality could still be there. But if life, however rudimentary in its symptoms, exists in a metal, it must be admitted as present, involved perhaps, or elementary and elemental in the earth or other material existences akin to the metal. If we can pursue our inquiries farther, not obliged to stop short where our immediate means of investigation fail us, we may be sure from our unvarying experience of nature that investigations thus pursued will, in the end, prove to us that there is no break, no rigid line of demarcation between the earth and the metal formed in it, or between the metal and the plant, and pursuing the synthesis farther, that there is none either between the elements and atoms that constitute the earth or metal and the metal or earth that they constitute. Each step of this graded existence prepares the next, holds in itself what appears in that which follows it. Life is everywhere, secret or manifest, organized or elemental, involved or evolved, but universal, all-pervading, imperishable. Only its forms and organizings differ. A little complicated, we'll have to go a little into. So, actually, one para which we did last time, there's an interesting, I'm going back to page 189, okay, that paragraph ending with life principle. It's interesting because there is in the Prashna Upanishad, there is a quote which is interesting, which Sri Aurobindo has given in the synthesis, that life is not just one plane above matter and one plane below mind. It is not something like that. It is life that is spreading itself all over. It goes right up to, after all, what is life? Chit Shakti. So it goes all over. Just like substance also at the lowest level is subtle, but gross, but subtle at the highest level. All these 7 principles are there involved in each other. So that is what that quotation is, and this, what we are seeing now, he is saying largely the same thing. But I'll just read out that quote from the Prashna Upanishad. Okay? He's saying about life, about the vital. This is a quotation from the Prashna Upanishad. As the spokes of a wheel in its nave, so is the life energy, all established, the triple knowledge and the sacrifice and the power of the strong and the purity of the wise. Under the control of the life energy is all this that is established in the triple heaven. In other words, life is there, but just like the wheel is sending out its spokes everywhere, life is penetrating matter, it's penetrating mind, and it's penetrating everywhere. So life, just as matter also is doing the same, mind also is doing the same. There is a mind in matter, there is a mind in life. And actually, in fact, there is Satchidananda in everything. So they are all intermixed. Although they seem to be separated and graded, it is true that they are graded, yet there is everything contained in it. So this is largely what he's saying, what we read just now, but we'll go through each sentence to see what he's saying. So, we have to do the para in some recent discoveries, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, we'll go sentence by sentence and see what he's saying. In some recent discoveries, which, if their conclusions are accepted, must throw an intense light on the problem of life in matter. A great Indian physicist has pointed attention to the response to stimulus as an infallible sign of the existence of life. I don't know if you know what...
I can talk a little bit about it.
Yeah.
He experimented a lot with music.
Also.
And he would play different types of music to different plants. And he would see that if he played certain music to tomatoes, they would grow much better and give larger fruits. And certain music they would react negatively to.
Yeah.
So he did a lot of experimentation with that.
Yeah.
Following on that, years later, of course, Tompkins and Bird wrote The Secret Life of Plants.
Yes, a beautiful book.
And their major first example was a philodendron plant in a room. And then they had a pot of boiling water, and they threw live shrimp into it. And they had the plant hooked up to electrodes, and it went wild.
Yeah.
It was suffering the death of those shrimp.
Yes.
And then they would do other things. And so
Exactly.
This is briefly a lot of the research that's been going on. But there's a new book out now, or newer book, called The Secrets of the Soil. Very profound book. And I've talked about the system of the roots and the fungus that trees send to support each other.
Yeah.
It's a magnificent study.
Yeah, there is a lot of things which they're discovering
It's
now.
about plants which are supposed to be living because they grow. But there's a Japanese scientist who's done work on water. Now, water is supposed to be matter.
Yes.
It's amazing. He has experimented and proved that water, if you put in 3 glasses and you speak to it about love, then the crystals that are formed are beautiful. And the second one, not so well. The third becomes
Chaotic.
yes.
Yeah. It's a Japanese scientist who has done
Yes,
that.
and he's formulated his research in seeing the crystals
Yeah,
and how they change.
that's right.
Brilliant work.
And then he concludes that we are 90% water, so if we also throw these vibrations of love to us,
Exactly.
the water within us will become healthy and nice, and so our health will become good.
Very true.
That's
Very
right.
true.
That's what he said. What you said just now about the shrimp and all that, is it Jagadish Chandra Bose who did that?
No.
It is somebody else.
It's much later.
Yeah, exactly.
Tompkins and Burke.
Because what Jagadish Chandra Bose did was, he put electrodes into a plant, and then when you send an electrical impulse, there's a reaction.
Right.
And he showed that the oscillograph, the pattern of the oscillograph from the plant tissue is the same as that of a muscle tissue. If you put electrodes into a muscle, you get the same pattern. This is what he did and found.
Well, I think these fellows took the same idea
Yes,
from Bose
yes.
and hooked up electrodes to a plant.
That's right.
When they made their
Yes.
tests.
And in fact, in the book that you are talking about, there are some fantastic things.
Yeah.
There are many plants, and there's one man experiment. He comes and breaks a plant. And after 2 days, when he enters the room, he has not even touched a single plant. The plant starts showing fear. The vibrations of fear, they show.
The perception is there
Yes,
that this is danger of
that's right. And the other one which is most interesting is classical music and jazz music. There's a loudspeaker and the plant. When you play this beautiful classical music, the plant goes and hugs the loudspeaker. And is there in that same book.
Yes.
And when you play metal and hard jazz and all these things, the plant moves away from the source of the sound. So experiments even have been done in Chidambaram for paddy fields. They played violin music and beautiful music. The growth was wonderful, and it was much better yield and also healthy plants. So music has got so much effect on everything. Okay, so we stopped in the middle. Then he's saying, it is especially, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4th line from the top.
Yes.
It is especially the phenomenon of plant life that has been illumined by his data and illustrated in all its subtle functionings. But we must not forget that in the essential point, the same proof of vitality, the response to stimulus, the positive state of life and its negative state, which we call death, have been affirmed by him in metals as in the plant.
And that's extraordinary.
Yeah. So, he is talking of Srimad is saying even death in metals. I have heard of fatigue in metals.
Yeah, but not death.
But not death. But Srimad is saying even death. I don't know.
And he's done it. Jagdish Chandra has
Huh?
done that. He's saying that the scientist has proved even the death in metals.
Okay. Then have been affirmed by even metals as in the plant. Not indeed with the same abundance. Okay. Not indeed so as to show an essentially identical organization of life. But it is possible that good instruments of the right nature and sufficient delicacy be invented, more points of similarity between the metal and the plant life could be discovered. And even if it proved not to be so, this might mean that the same or any life organization is absent, but the beginnings of vitality could still be there. Now it's clear what he's saying. Death may not have been proved or not very apparent, nor is it in so much abundance. But if you can invent instruments which are very, very subtle, you may be able to see death in even metals. That's what he's saying.
And he says, but he does say, negative state which we call death.
Yeah, that's right.
That's
an important thing.
There.
Which we call, because death is not really what we think. It is not the end of everything.
Exactly.
It's only a transformation. Okay. Then, at the beginnings of vitality. But if life, however rudimentary in its symptoms, exists in the metal, it must be admitted as present, involved perhaps, or elementary and elemental in the earth or other material existences akin to the metal. Okay, we have to see the difference between elementary and elemental. Elementary is beginning, foundational,
In
just
its
that
earliest stage.
simple.
Yes. Yeah.
Elements refer to the different elements. Oxygen, hydrogen, these are the elements.
Elemental.
Yeah, elemental means that. So, refers to the elements. Okay, so if we can pursue our inquiries farther, we, not obliged to stop short where our immediate means of investigation fail us, we may be sure from our unvarying experience of nature that investigations thus pursued will, in the end, prove to us that there is no break, no rigid line of demarcation between the earth and the metal formed in it, or between the metal and the plant, and pursuing the synthesis farther, that there is none either between the elements and atoms that constitute the earth, or metal and the metal or earth that they constitute. There is no difference between all these things. That's what he says.
He takes us further this way.
Yes.
And we see that this is Sri Aurobindo now speaking.
Yes. Life is there everywhere. In the earth, in the metal, even in the atom, life is there. Finally, he says, each step of this graded existence prepares the next, holds in itself what appears in that which follows it. So it's a continuous thing. Life is contained in matter, mind is contained in life. And mind also contains the other things, supermind. He normally doesn't go into too many details, he is supermind. So they are all contained in each other. Again, we have that Russian doll. Okay. So, each step of this graded existence prepares the next, holds in itself what appears in that which follows it. Life is everywhere, secret or manifest, organized or elemental, involved or evolved, but universal, all-pervading, imperishable. Only its forms and its organizings differ. So, matter, life and mind are all the same thing, and it is there everywhere, right from the top to the bottom. From superconscient to inconscient, everything is just one, but taking different forms. That's what he said. Life also is there everywhere, mind also is there everywhere. In fact, he says supermind also is there everywhere. Even in matter there is supermind. Okay? We go to the next.
Yes.
We must remember that the physical response to stimulus is only an outward sign of life, even as our breathing and locomotion in ourselves. An exceptional stimulus is applied by the experimenter, and vivid responses are given, which we can at once recognize as indices of vitality in the object of the experiment. But during its whole existence, the plant is responding constantly to a constant mass of stimulation from its environment. That is to say, there is a constantly maintained force in it which is capable of responding to the application of force from its surroundings. It is said that the idea of a vital force in the plant or other living organism has been destroyed by these experiments. But when we say that a stimulus has been applied to the plant, we mean that an energized force, a force in dynamic movement, has been directed on that object. And when we say that a response is given, we mean that an energized force capable of dynamic movement and of sensitive vibration answers to the shock. There is a vibrant reception and reply, as well as a will to grow and be, indicative of a submental, a vital physical organization of consciousness force hidden in the form of being. The fact would seem to be then that as there is a constant dynamic energy in movement in the universe, which takes various material forms, more or less subtle or gross, so in each physical body or object, plant or animal or metal, there is stored and active the same constant dynamic force. A certain interchange of these two gives us the phenomena which we associate with the idea of life. It is this action that we recognize as the action of life energy, and that which so energizes itself as the life force. Mind energy, life energy, material energy are different dynamisms of one world force. In fact, he has universalized the whole thing. He is not talking now of matter or of plant or of animal or of man. There is life everywhere, and when one element of force is coming on an object, it is reacting. This is the basic thing. Man also reacts to incoming vibrations. The animal also reacts to incoming vibrations. The plants also do that, and even metal is doing that. That's what he's saying.
But when science says that we destroyed something by bombarding it, that's not correct.
Yeah, that's right. That's what he's saying. It is not correct.
Not correct. No.
Can you explain that? What when we destroy?
No, he's saying that when you make an experiment, in the text he's saying,
right.
When you make an experiment, science is saying that you have destroyed their life there.
Okay.
But it is not like that. That's what he's saying. So life is there everywhere. That's what he's saying. And we see it only when we think of breathing, eating, sleeping, all these things. But it's not like that. It's a principle of force, energy. Matter is there, a principle of substance. Life is a principle of energy and force. And then mind is the energy of knowledge. So different planes and different organizations, but basically the same thing.
Mother often once asked us, what is the difference in man and a stone? No, and a tree. And a tree. Virtually they're the same,
Yes.
she says.
Even the tree reacts.
And I love Khalil Gibran's statement. The only difference between me and a stone is the speed of our heartbeats.
Khalil Gibran. He was a Lebanese from Lebanon. Okay, so even when a form appears to us to be dead, this force still exists in it in potentiality, although its familiar operations of vitality are suspended and about to be permanently ended. Within certain limits, that which is dead can be revived. The habitual operations, the response, the circulation of active energy can be restored. And this proves that what we call life was still there in the body, latent, that is to say, not active in its usual habits, its habits of ordinary physical functioning, its habits of nervous play and response, its habits in the animal of conscious mental response. it is difficult to suppose that there is a distinct entity called life which has gone entirely out of the body and gets into it again when it feels. How? Since there is nothing to connect it with the body, that somebody is stimulating the form. In certain cases, such as catalepsy, we see that the outward physical signs and operations of life are suspended, but the mentality is there, self-possessed and conscious, although unable to compel the usual physical responses. Certainly, it is not the fact that the man is physically dead but mentally alive, or that life has gone out of the body while mind still inhabits it, but only that the ordinary physical functioning is suspended, while the mental is still active. So, he is talking of catalepsy and trance and all this. Catalepsy is a state where physically there are no signs of life, no breathing, no heartbeats. We all know that it happened to Mother also once in 1962. For half an hour there was no sign of life at all. And then she had that fantastic experience of the vibrations of love. That was in 1962. So for a long time there was no. And that is the reason why even towards the end of her life she was going on saying, please don't be in a hurry to put me into a box.
Yes, yes.
Because there may be no signs of life, but there is no guarantee that I am dead. So again and again she used to stress this. And we know that even a man who is dead can be revived. In fact, there are very interesting cases, even in newspapers recently, about a year ago, there was a man declared dead in Chennai, in the hospital. He was declared dead. And the doctors told the family, take him away, he is gone. They brought him home, he sat up and he was alive again.
Yeah.
And the family made a case against the doctors saying that you have been negligent and you have not done your duty properly. But that's not correct, because the doctors saw that there is no sign of life.
Yes, yes.
And their understanding he is dead. But he is really not dead. But how can the doctor know that? So the case was not, if the judges had read about Aurobindo, they would have absolved the doctors. They would not have found them guilty.
Yes.
This happens so often.
Yes. And even the plant that seems to be dead
Yes.
can be revived.
Yes.
I've seen it many, many times. You take a plumeria. It's called the graveyard tree because it can never be killed. It's eternal life. A cyclone will tear it out of the ground. It can lie there for months at a time, and someone will replant it and it'll come right back.
That's right. I have seen the same phenomena in our park in the Pondicherry. When the cyclones have come and the tree has fallen down, uprooted completely.
Yes.
After a few days, shoots from the trunk starts coming up.
Yes.
Life. Just think also of a solid concrete wall. Even if there's a small hole, a small plant starts growing from there. The power of life. It's fantastic.
Yes.
So Aurobindo is saying that life is there everywhere, even if there are no signs of life. Certainly it's not a fact that the man is physically dead but mentally alive. So also, in certain forms of trance, both the physical functionings and the outward mental are suspended, but afterwards resume their operation, in some cases by external stimulation, but more normally by spontaneous return to activity from within. Aurobindo has written all this 100 years ago.
Amazing.
And now we know that people can be revived. Those who have drowned by pumping the heart and mouth-to-mouth respiration, you can revive them within 15-20 minutes. And all this he has written so many 100 years ago when all this was not
But
there.
also the yogis who can stop the heart
Yes,
almost indefinitely
yes,
at times.
yes. They have
Stop the
experimented.
breathing. And Sri Aurobindo did it, I understand.
That's right. So, you can, yogi can, Hatha yogi particularly,
Yes.
he can stop his beating of the heart, he can stop completely, and breathing also. When actually After independence, the Russians came to investigate all these things. And Hatha Yogi was even buried for 5 hours. He comes out fully alive. So these things sound very funny and very improbable, but they are all facts. So also in certain forms of trance, both the physical functionings and the outward mental are suspended, but afterwards resume their operation. In some cases by external stimulation, but more normally by spontaneous return to activity from within. What has really happened is that the surface mind force has been withdrawn into subconscious mind and the surface life force into sub-active life, and either the whole man has lapsed into the subconscious existence or else he has withdrawn his outer life into the subconscious while his inner being has been lifted into the superconscient. But the main point for us at present is that the force, whatever it be, that maintains dynamic energy of life in the body, has indeed suspended its outer operations, but still informs the organized substance. So life can be apparent, it can also withdraw into the inner and still be there. A point comes, however, at which it is no longer possible to restore the suspended activities. And this occurs when either such a, how do you pronounce this word? Lesion, injury or hurt has been inflicted on the body as makes it useless or incapable of the habitual functionings. Or in the absence of such lesion, when the process of disintegration has begun, that is to say, when the force that should renew the life action becomes entirely inert to the pressure of the environing forces with whose mass of stimulation it was wont to keep up a constant interchange. Even then, there is life in the body, but a life that is busy only with the process of disintegrating the formed substance so that it may escape in its elements and constitute with them new forms. That's very interesting.
Yes.
He's saying even after death, the decomposition doesn't occur by itself. It is life that is causing the decomposition.
This is so beautiful. So it's switched.
This is so...
It was here, working with this body, and now it's gone on the other side, working on that.
Yes.
To finish this off and get on with the new
That's
job.
right. Even disintegration is a process of life, he's saying. Okay.
The will.
The will in the universal force that held the form together now withdraws from constitution and supports instead a process of dispersion. Not till then is there the real death of the body. So there is a will which holds the form together, and when the will says, now it is time for this form to be dissolved, it goes away and the form dissolves. Fantastic. So now, after all this discussion, his conclusion, life then is the dynamic play of a universal force. A force in which mental consciousness and nervous vitality are in some form, or at least in their principle, always inherent, and therefore they appear and organize themselves in our world in the forms of matter. The life play of this force manifests itself as an interchange of stimulation and response. Interchange of stimulation and response to stimulation between the different forms it has built up, and in which it keeps up its constant dynamic pulsation. Each form is constantly taking into itself and giving out again the breath and energy of the common force. each form feeds upon that and nourishes itself with it by various means, whether indirectly by taking in other forms in which the energy is stored, or directly by absorbing the dynamic discharges it receives from outside. All this is the play of life. But it is chiefly recognizable to us where the organization of it is sufficient for us to perceive its more outward and complex movements, and especially when it partakes of the nervous type of vital energy which belongs to our own organization. It is for this reason that we are ready enough to admit life in the plant, because obvious phenomena of life are there, and this becomes still easier if it can be shown that it manifests symptoms of nervosity and has a vital system not very different from our own, but are unwilling to recognize it in the metal and the earth and the chemical atom, where these phenomenal developments can with difficulty be detected or do not apparently at all exist. So, this place where we have is a very interesting thing, how he's saying that life creates different forms and each form is absorbing from outside and giving out itself. Constantly this interchange is there everywhere. The plant is giving itself to man for feeding him, and the plant is absorbing sunlight and force, and so this is what is happening with all living things. That's what he's saying. There is an incoming and an outgoing action. Even plants, trees, we know that they absorb oxygen and give out.
No, absorb carbon dioxide.
Carbon dioxide and give out oxygen. So this phenomena is happening at all the levels. That's what he's saying. But it happens in different ways. This is interesting. Each form, I'm reading from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7th line from the top. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6th line from the top. Top of page 194. Okay? It's very interesting what he's saying. Each form feeds upon that and nourishes itself with it by various means. So what are those various means? Whether indirectly by taking in other forms in which the energy is stored. This is what we are doing with plants. Energy is stored in the plant and we are taking indirectly, but we can do that directly also. How come? That's what he's saying. See. Or directly by absorbing the dynamic discharges it receives from outside. For instance, he's talking of sunlight or other energy forms. Mother would take energy directly without intaking, from flowers. She would get the energy. Or Sri Aurobindo can get the energy from the universal energy which is there. So it can be done indirectly through other life forms, whether it's meat or vegetable or whatever, or it can be directly through the life energy which is there in the universe.
But human beings also are drawing, they are just not conscious of it. We are drawing energy from our environment,
yes.
We are just not conscious of it.
Yes, that's right.
But there are instances where one can feel that I get very tired with this person, or in the presence of this person I feel very energized.
Exactly. What you are saying is very interesting, because there is this phenomena. There are people who actually exude energy, and those who are in their environment, they feel energized. But there are others who suck in energy from others. They are known as vampires. And it's very interesting, because if you are in the company of such people, you will feel exhausted. And
I've been there. I have been there.
Yeah?
Yes, I've had that experience twice.
Yeah.
It's very, very painful.
Yeah. So, in fact, Mother has even identified some people. But they are all gone now, and you wouldn't know them. So there's no point in taking names also, and I won't do that. But there are people who draw energy from others, and there are some who are all the time generous with their giving of the energy.
And you feel so wonderful in their presence.
Yes, that's right. So that's what he's saying. Okay, all this is the play of life. So there is life everywhere, and life creates different forms, and each form is drawing in energy and giving out energy. And this is constantly happening everywhere, all over the everywhere. This is what life is.